Yeah.
Okay, it's 6:30. I welcome you all to the Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, January 9th. We have a few business items to go over before we go over the comprehensive plan proposal. The first item of business would be the approval of the minutes from Tuesday, December 5th. And I guess I would just like to make a comment that I noticed that Catherine Latsis was not listed as attending, but she was listed as voting. So I think you were here.
I was not here.
You were not here.
Oh.
Okay.
So where was she?
Well then, you were voting. So that should be corrected.
That was magic. Where did she vote? Oh, she voted here?
Yes, she did.
On page 4 at the bottom.
So on page 4, it needs to be corrected to remove Catherine.
On page 7.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. She was voting without being present.
Wow, that was pretty good.
I'm efficient.
Okay. Mr. Rosenberg, did you want to?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes of Tuesday, December 5th, 2017 as amended.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Chaffin seconds the motion. All those in favor to pass the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, I think the next thing we were supposed to look at and adopt was the schedule for 2018. Does anybody have any specific considerations?
Yes, Madam Chair. As noted in Ms. Shecky's comments, I think the election day, November 6th, it's a big election. It's not an off-year election. I think having a meeting that night is not a good idea.
Okay.
And to reschedule or do whatever is necessary if there's business.
Does anybody else have another? Does everybody agree that election night should be rescheduled?
Yes. Yeah.
For the Planning Commission. Okay. Any other comments?
Would you like to comment on the Jewish holidays?
I don't think we had anything that really was affected. Like the December 4th, the second night of Hanukkah, I don't think that is a concern. Rosh Hashanah, already that was looked at for September 18th. Let's see, I'm a little confused here. I guess for that it's September 18th and 25th for those. And that's probably the only thing. I don't think Passover midweek is an issue. So I think it's all kind of accounted for in here.
And we can just wait until we get closer to time to see whether we need to reschedule November 6th to another date or whether we just cancel that meeting.
Right.
Depending on what's ready to move forward. Okay, great. So we will just note November 6th will either be canceled or rescheduled.
Right. Because the commissioners would not meet that evening, so there'll be a lot of things that would not meet that evening.
Okay, great.
Do you need a motion to adopt this or is a consensus?
It's not a formal action. If you all are generally in agreement with the calendar, we'll just go with it as it is. I'll fix it up and then we'll get it posted.
Okay. And things can be changed?
Yes, of course. They can be changed as we go along through the year if things come up.
Okay. The next item is, the reason we really are out here is case number F17003, the 2018 Arapahoe County Comprehensive Plan, and we will hear from...
I'm sorry. Could you take action on the designated posting location? That's the one that looks like this.
Yes. We also have before us a motion to establish posting locations for 2018 for all planning commission agendas, and I think we were given a copy of this ahead of time. Anybody have any concerns with the motion as it's written?
Why wouldn't we post this on the internet?
We do post it on the internet. It's just not considered required, but we do it.
By statute, we're required to designate a posting location, and it makes it easy. We always kind of double post on the internet, but we need to have a specific location where we can contact something up. So in case there's computer issues or something doesn't happen on the internet, we cannot say we've met the posting.
So on this one, we do need a motion.
Okay. Any other concerns with this as it's presented? Anybody interested in making a motion to adopt the posting locations? Mr. Patton?
I'd like to move to adopt the posting locations as submitted by the Arapahoe County staff.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Rosenberg seconds the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we will go to the case number F17003, the 2018 Arapahoe County Comprehensive Plan, and we will hear from the county first, Mr. White.
Thank you.
Summarize many months of work.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners, and I'll try to be brief, although I do have some comments and some things I want to say for the record. So please bear with me, and I'll try to get through this as quickly as I can. I would request, though, that if you have any questions, that you wait till I'm finished with my presentation, and we can go over all the questions and other concerns you may have all at once. And with that, for the record, my name is Alan White. I'm a planning project specialist with the Planning Division of Arapahoe County. As was stated, this is case number F17003, adoption of the 2018 Arapahoe County Comprehensive Plan. The preparation of this plan has been in the works for about 18 months, and tonight it culminates in your consideration at a public hearing as required by state statute. Also as required by state statute, we are required to provide public notice of this hearing, and that was accomplished in the Villager and I-70 Scout newspapers on December 14th and December 19th, respectively, and also notice was provided on the county's website on December 14th. Publishers' affidavits are included in the case file. The public has had an opportunity to review. Seems like this keeps going out, or is it just me? The public has had an opportunity to review and comment on the draft plan beginning on October 20th when it was placed on the county's website through November 27th. That was our public review period. But also, again, beginning on December 14th until and including through today, the public had an opportunity to review the draft plan and provide any comments. Well, for the record, I'll just say that we have not received any comments that were germane to the Planning Commission via posting it on the website. As we've gone over this several times in study sessions, I want to reiterate and say for the record that this really is an update to the 2001 comprehensive plan. It builds off the 2001 plan, and as it was amended in 2012 and 2014, it retains many of the goals, policies, and strategies from that earlier plan, but with some important additions that I'll discuss in a little detail a little bit later. The new plan, or the 2018 plan, utilizes the principles and planning concepts that were set out in the 2001 plan, but it also incorporates the tier concept that was adopted in 2012 2012 and amended again in 2014. It's also important to note that this update recognizes and defers to the sub-area plans that were prepared and adopted after the 2001 plan was prepared and adopted. And those sub-area plans, as you know, are the Lowry Range sub-area plan, the 4 square mile sub-area plan, the Strasburg sub-area plan, and the Myers sub-area plan. Those plans remain intact and adopted, still adopted by reference into the 2018 comprehensive plan, but they are intended to be used as standalone documents. So they are not being proposed for any amendments in this process. So they exist now as they existed when they were first adopted. One thing that has changed with this update is a slight change in terminology used to describe the areas where we anticipate development and are encouraging urban development to occur, and other areas of the county that will remain urban. The development framework that you see illustrated on the map that's in 2 pieces, but hopefully it's put close enough together that it looks like one map. Those are the development framework maps, and what they illustrate are the designated growth areas. These are the same areas that were designated as growth areas in the 2001 plan, consisting of the urban area, which was formerly known as the urban service area. This area now includes Sky Ranch and the Prosper developments. That were previously shown in 2012 as being in the planning reserve. So those areas have been converted to urban area. The second designated growth area are the rural town centers of Myers and Strasburg. And then other incorporated cities and towns in the county, several in the western portion of the county, are also designated as growth areas, as well as the incorporated municipalities of Bennett and Deer Trail. Those were included in a category of eastern communities in the 2001 plan. In this version, we broke them out because they're treated a little bit differently in the updated plan. The rural area consists of tiers 1 and 2 that I think you're familiar with. That's basically a corridor 4 miles to either side of I-70. Of course, as that 4-mile corridor exists in Arapahoe County to either side of I-70, obviously it doesn't include anything in Adams County. Tier 3, which is essentially the white area that is shown on these maps. The urban reserve, which is a sub-area of Tier 1, if you will. Formerly that was designated as the planning reserve, and it's been expanded in this plan. I'll discuss that in a little more detail in just a minute. And then the regional waste disposal site, which consists of about 4 square miles and some areas outside of the actual Superfund site and the DADS landfill operation that are owned by the Lowry Trust Fund. And I'll talk about those areas in a little more detail in just a minute. The framework and the policies in the plan direct urban growth to the urban growth areas. That hasn't changed since the 2001 plan. Annexation is recognized as a beneficial way to accommodate growth, and most of the policies dealing with annexation and growth in municipalities are carried over from the 2001 plan. However, the updated version includes some potential strategies and policies dealing with enclaves. There are a number of enclaves that exist in the western portion of the county that create a lot of confusion with service delivery and dealing with development and everything from responding to code complaints and getting goods delivered within those areas. So there's an emphasis on trying to work with cities to get those enclaves annexed to the appropriate municipalities. There's a new section dealing with tiers 1 and 2. Those didn't exist in 2001, so we needed to provide some description and some policies dealing with those areas. As I mentioned, included in Tier 1 is the urban reserve. This is an area that's set aside, as the name implies, for urban development in the future. In case our projections are off, this is an area that is held in reserve for accommodating future development if growth occurs at a rate greater than we've anticipated in the projections we put together. The reserve has increased in size by about 14 square miles from the planning reserve to the urban reserve, and that includes 6 square miles that were included in the update that are located south of the Prosper development along Watkins Road. And as an update, as of last month, an annexation by Aurora in that area has basically excluded from that urban reserve about 4.5 square miles from that 6 square miles. And I would anticipate further annexations by either the city of Aurora or Bennett within that urban reserve area shown on the map in the future. Tier 1 uses today are primarily rural residential with small agricultural operations, and these land uses are intended to remain under the 2018 plan. Tier 2 remains rural as well, except for the Strasburg and Byers sub areas, as well as the town of Deer Trail. The remainder of the unincorporated county, which is Tier 3, remains rural with agricultural activities preserved, and the preservation of the rural character and agricultural operations in the eastern portion of the county is a goal carried over from the 2001 plan. I keep talking about the goals and policies, but really the overall goals of this plan have not changed substantially from the 2001 plan. That plan, in my opinion, set out some very realistic goals based on good planning practice and in consideration of the powers that cities have versus what counties have in terms of development and home rule and annexation and those types of enabling statutes. Obviously, policies and strategies have been modified based on the development framework. The terminology changed, so some of the strategies and policies needed to change. They're organized, as you've noticed in the document, first county policies, goals and policies that apply to any development countywide, and then later on there's a section that singles out policies that deal specifically with the rural area and the tiers and the urban reserve. As I said, most of the overall goals haven't changed from the 2001 plan, but there are several topics that are new in this 2018 update, and some of the more notable topics that are covered in this update include hazard areas, renewable water supplies and water conservation, the concept of healthy communities, economic development and tourism. There's an emphasis on continuity and connectivity in the transportation network, especially connecting bicycle and pedestrian facilities to transit. Sustainability and sustainable development is discussed in detail, including alternative energy development. And finally, there's a section that deals with mineral resource extraction. As I mentioned, this plan has been in the works for about 18 months. It began with drafting several sections of the plan and distributing it to staff for internal review and comment. That process began in April last year, and we finished it up in about 2 months. Based on those comments, we made some changes and then sent out another draft to all our referral agencies, agencies that you see commenting on development proposals all the time. That review period lasted from June 22nd to July 21st, and we actually gave an extension to a couple of communities to mid-August so that they could submit comments to us. After that comment period was over, we took those comments, made additional changes to the draft, and prepared what we called the Planning Commission review draft, and that's the draft that we sat down with you and reviewed on 3 occasions on July 18th, August 8th, and September 26th of 2017. We also, during that review period by you, went to the Board of County Commissioners. We gave them a copy of the same draft that you had, gave them a presentation on the major goals and policies of the plan, and sought comments from the Board of County Commissioners as well. I will note that we didn't receive any comments one way or the other from the commissioners. Of course, they're very busy doing other things. So after we had our 3 study sessions, we prepared yet another draft incorporating your comments and suggested changes into that draft. We called that the public review draft, and that's the draft that we put on the county website and put notices in the newspapers that it was available. Those notices were published in the Villager and I-70 Scout. We also prepared a press release, but only the I-70 Scout elected to run that press release about the comprehensive plan availability. The public review period on that draft lasted from October 20th to November 27th, so well over a month or about 5 weeks for review. We again sent that review to our referral agencies. We expanded the list to include more agencies at the state of Colorado, the folks involved with the Denver Arapahoe disposal site operation, and several other agencies that weren't included in our first round of referral review. Of over 100 agencies, we received comments from 13 agencies, 2 county departments, 1 citizen, 1 developer's representative, and planning division staff. Also during this period, we gathered all the comments that weren't discussed necessarily by all the planning commission, but were submitted individually by planning commission members, and put those in our packet of public comments. I believe you all received that packet sometime in late December, all the comments that we received during that public review period. I will note that most of the comments that we received during this public review period from the referral agencies were clarifications of changes that we did make based upon their previous comments, or updates to information that they didn't give us the first time around because either they neglected to do that or they didn't respond the first time around, or many of the agencies had no further comments or provided positive comments about the direction and the policies within the plan. And many of those comments and suggested changes have been incorporated into staff's recommended changes that I've outlined in attachments A and B to the staff report. I would like to note and really want to stress that the proposed staff changes do not materially alter the vision or direction established by the draft plan, the goals and policies, nor the potential final outcomes of the strategies that are included in the draft. A lot of it is just tweaking the verbiage and making more clear what the strategy or the policy is meant to say. I included in my staff report, and I do apologize for it being so lengthy. It was not my intent for it to be real lengthy, but I wanted to give you a document that you could use during your adoption process that you could refer to, and rather than us sit here and try to craft rewording or figure out what the rewording should be, you've got something to work from, or you just say, that looks good, let's go with that staff recommended change. But there were a few comments that we received from the public that I felt raised some questions about the direction of the plan and some of the policies within the plan that I hope you took a look at, because if we do want to incorporate those comments, those are the kinds of changes that are going to make a material change in some of the direction and policies that are established by the plan. One of those, this isn't a big, actually it doesn't really materially alter the comp plan, but I think it's important to acknowledge something the hazard mitigation plan says, and that is that as weather events get more severe, the impact of those hazards gets more severe, and that's the only point that was trying to be made in the including that comment or that paragraph from the multi-hazard mitigation plan, and that's a comment that Commissioner Rick made and submitted to staff. There are a few policies dealing with the urban area that we received from a citizen about only allowing commercial and employment development in the rural area only if it is agriculturally related. Complement to that is discouraging rezoning for commercial development in the rural area, and why we would want to do that. I've included in my staff report some comments about we're not entirely discouraging it. We want to see it in Myers and Strasburg and Deer Trail. There's also a comment about forming special districts outside of the designated growth areas, and that is something that the Board of County Commissioners looks at very carefully, and it's at their discretion whether they approve those districts or not. But it's what is important to note, and why this policy says to restrict those, is that sometimes it's more economically advantageous for an existing district to expand rather than starting a whole new district. So those kinds of things need to be looked at very carefully. And then the third issue dealing with development in the rural area is restricting the rezoning of properties for lots that range between 1 and 9 acres. And those are rural residential zone districts where we allow lot sizes of 1.6 and 2.4 acres. The policies state that, again, those are more appropriate for the rural town center growth areas and not just anywhere in the rural area. There's a policy that was challenged about trying to avoid or discourage continuous linear development along I-70, and trying to create nodes of development and or community separators. Those are carried over from the 2001 plan, but if that's not something that you believe the county should pursue, then we should change those strategies and policies. A couple of items dealing with water supply. A comment from the county attorney's office about requiring water supply information and making the determination of adequate water supply at the zoning stage. The feeling is that we get one shot to make that determination of adequate water supply. Is that the appropriate time to make it, or should it be later in the process when, in all honesty, a lot of developers have done more investigation and into water supply and acquiring water rights. So I think it's an issue that needs study and evaluation, and I've proposed wording that says, rather than require, that we're going to look at the issue and come up with a recommendation of when we should make that determination. The other water supply question concerns requiring water providers to use aquifers only during times of drought or emergency conditions. In retrospect, they have a right to use that water. So what my rewording suggests is that we should encourage them to transition away from relying on groundwater, except in cases of supplying water in drought conditions and emergency.
Madam Chair, can I comment on that?
Sure. I'm almost done.
Yeah, encouraging doesn't really do anything. So to me, to have that kind of doesn't mean much, rather than to require.
Okay.
Doesn't have any meat.
A couple of other comments about land use in the rural area, and these are dealing with staff comments 1EE and 1FF. There were two issues, and some things have come up recently on your docket concerning these types of facilities, but there's a strategy to restrict regional utility facilities from locating in tiers 1 and 2. Implicit in that is they should be in tier 3. Is that where they should be? So that's one issue. And another issue was we had a strategy in there to change the lot size standard in the AE zone district. That's what most of the eastern portion of the county is zoned. That requires 35 lots as a minimum. That was I proposed a modification to that based upon, I don't know if 70 acres is the right answer. We looked at what several other counties have done, and nobody's doing anything like that. So it's one of those things we should look at in more detail and make a decision on that at a later date. And then finally, the regional waste disposal site section has been totally rewritten because there are some distinct areas within what was called the regional waste disposal site. So we've broken those out and written policies and strategies dealing with each one of those separate smaller areas. And the question for the commission is, does that new section adequately reflect what you think should be going on in that area in the future? I'm to my final comments, and I apologize for taking more time than I wanted to. Putting together a comprehensive plan is an ongoing process. You've probably noticed that there's a lot of strategies that deal with additional studies or doing additional plans or inventories, certainly looking at new regulations. That's all part of the comprehensive planning process, and so you're never really done with a comprehensive plan. I hesitate to say this, but there are 356 strategies included in this comprehensive plan. I know that sounds a little daunting, but not all of those require any follow-up action. Some are policy statements. But even if half of those require follow-up action, that's quite a to-do list for the next 5 or 10 years. So even if this gets adopted and goes on a shelf, there are ongoing things that are going to amend the plan and add to the implementation of the plan. So I guess what I'm trying to say is this plan perfect? Probably not. There are going to be things the day after it gets adopted that we go, why didn't we address that? Or there's a new development trend that we didn't foresee, and we're going to be back at this in a year or 6 months or whatever, making changes to it. And you shouldn't be afraid of that. The document is intended to be a living document, to be changed upon changes in trends or desires or goals of the community. So it may need some changes in 6 months to a year, but we're urging you to take action tonight, and we can address those areas, those issues if there are big ones in the future. So based upon all the comments that we've received from the Commission, from our referral agencies, from staff, plus all the changes already made, we're recommending that Planning Commission take action tonight to adopt the 2018 Arapahoe County Comprehensive Plan by resolution, with the changes recommended by staff as outlined in Attachments A and Attachment B to the staff report. Just a procedural note, the Commission can choose to accept all of staff's recommended changes or go through the list and delete the ones that you think are inappropriate or you don't like the rewording of, and say no to those. You can include those in a motion. And you can do that by referring to the agency and then the comment letter. For example, there are comments from SEMSWA. So if you don't like comment C, just say, I want to delete from the list of staff recommended changes the modification proposed under SEMSWA comment C. A little cumbersome, but it'll certainly help staff accumulate all those changes and be able to prepare the next document, which hopefully is a final draft. You can also make changes to the plan by adding policies or strategies, and we can if they're not too involved or too complicated, we can work on that wording tonight. We can take a little recess and come up with wording for anything you want to add to the plan. A draft motion is included in Attachment B of the staff report. That was modified based on some last-minute comments we received last week, and so hopefully you have that with you. We're also requesting that the Commission consider making an effective date for the comprehensive plan being sometime in the future, because it will take a little bit of time to incorporate all the changes into a document that we can then get on the website and call it the adopted 2018 comprehensive plan. So with that, I'll conclude my comments and ask if there's any questions I can answer from the Commission. Also, I should have done this in the beginning. I have with me copies of the full staff report with attachment A and also copies of attachment B if you don't have those tonight, and also copies of the 3 maps that are before you tonight if you need copies of any of that.
Did you want to talk about
I did. We're suggesting February 12th for the effective date. That gives us essentially a month to get all the typos fixed and all the changes that you want to make made.
All right, thank you. Does anybody want copies of what Mr. White has? Or do we think we already have all?
Do you have copies of January 4th?
Yes.
You have this, right?
No, I'd like that too. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have it either.
Okay, are there any questions from the Planning Commission of Mr. White regarding his presentation? Mr. Rosenberg.
This one's pretty easy, and I'm sure there's an easy answer. Why, after all these years, do we keep the Lowry Range sub-area plan that's like long gone? Why do we keep that?
It's still an official document, and there are something could happen on that property in the future. You'll recall.
Because a couple of us were probably involved in that. Maybe 2 of us. I don't know if anybody
There
else
are within that sub-area plan, there are about 6 square miles on the northern part of that sub-area plan that are shown as for future development. And we could have interest in that sometime in the future. The rest of it is recommended to be a conservation area.
Right.
And I think without that sub-area plan being there,
So that would just simplify the process as if somebody wanted to come in and go, hey, we want to develop on this, even though it's not the original developers. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions of Mr. White?
Yeah,
Mrs. Blackman.
Mr. White, I have a question for you. So in the original draft we looked at on August 23rd, I recall discussion regarding flow lines.
What page? What kind of page?
So in the one in the binder, it's page 104. Okay. Strategy NCR 8.5H. And we had discussed, knowing that there are constraints at the state level, whether or not we should, at least contain a strategy in our plan to request mapping of flow lines. And it looks like in the version, the next version with the purple, on page 101, we elected not to carry that forward, just said that we would like it to conform with federal, state, and local safety standards. So I thought, if I recall, there was a vote to keep the flow line request in there, but I'm not finding a direct carryover of that in the newer document.
So the date of the one you have is, mine is December 14th draft. Because pages,
Pages are all different.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. 101 I don't have.
This one,
Is the older one.
yes, and the one with the, exactly, it's September 28th, the one that has the purple writing in it.
That was September 28th.
Yeah. So, I was just curious about whether staff had taken a position on that, because I thought the planning commissioners, I know we kind of put it to a straw poll, and
45.
I thought opted to keep it.
Well, I tried to avoid confusion on some of the drafts out there. The commission review draft that I have in front of me does have a strategy in there. I've got page 103. This should be the same document that posted on the website.
So that's NCR 7-6H. Require gathering system mapping by oil and gas operations. That's where you're at, right?
I guess I was just having trouble finding it.
Yeah. It's on the newest draft. It's 103.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
So it says the county will require mapping.
Great. You know, it's at the state level right now. If they did it, I think we should ask for it.
Yeah, I apologize for all the different versions of this that they created. Didn't know when those were.
Are you comfortable with that being
Yes.
still in there the way we decided it should be?
Yeah, I was having trouble tracking that it had continued forward. So just checking on that one. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. White before we open the public hearing?
I don't know whether I should ask you this or whether I should.
This is the time.
This is the time. This is the time. So, on some of these comments, we said that the county will. And on some of these, they've been changed to the county should. And this goes to the comment you just made. What is our obligation as far as shoulds and shalls and wills and maybes?
We actually sound like the state legislature. They go through.
Well, I just want to understand it. I mean, water providers.
I can answer that, I suppose, maybe somewhat generally. A comprehensive plan is a planning document. It's not code. You can't require someone to do something. You can suggest, you can encourage, you can strongly encourage, but ultimately the code to require something has to be adopted under the law of the state of Colorado for counties by a board of county commissioners in accordance with their statutory authority to adopt requirements. So where things are shall versus will versus should, I think the idea there, at least in some of the instances, is not to create something that's going to create expectations that can't be enforced unless and until the Board of Commissioners says, we're going to adopt this as code.
Mr. Rosen?
So are you saying the will and the must is in the land development code versus the comprehensive plan?
But that's not true. I'm looking right now at
Some that are must.
some that are will. I see that here that one of the Mr. Messenger made some comments that he questioned the use of the word will in policies. But throughout here, I see will, and he questioned the use of the word will in policies and strategies dealing with water supply and aquifers. And so, are we going to have will in all other areas except water supplies and aquifers? I mean, I think there's some really big issues here, and I'm just trying to get it straight in my mind what we put will on and what we put should on in the plan.
I got a comment. So looking at the news plan, page 48, strategy, that PFS 1.2b, require use of groundwater supplies only in drought or emergency conditions. The county will require water supply plan, blah, 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 blah. So that's stated pretty, require the use of groundwater supplies only in drought and emergency. It's already in there. So have you taken it out, changed it, or is that it in the neutral?
I haven't taken it out, but it's proposed for a modification.
As to what?
As to encouraging, because we don't have direct control over really any of the water providers in the county. So kind of the best we can do is make them aware of, and several of them are aware of, drought conditions and the reliance on groundwater, and they're trying to develop surface or renewable supplies. So what I propose changing the language to is encouraging them to transition away from totally relying on groundwater for their water supply.
So would you take the word out, require, and encourage? Change to encourage.
Encourage them to.
Water supplies only in drought and emergency conditions. So that's another word.
So all we can say is, please, please, please.
Mrs. Latson.
Well, let me ask a question, and some based on my limited experience coming in on the other side as a developer. I know there are certain requirements as far as getting letters from sanitation, water districts, state engineer, et cetera, that are placed on a developer. That's part of the land development code, I would imagine. Would it be possible, versus us encouraging as a general principle, to require updates to the land development code to help this along, so that, because I think what we can do with the comp plan is say we think the county's land development code needs to change to reflect drought conditions, et cetera, that can happen in our area. I'd like to see this stronger than an encourage, because I think at a practical level, water development is incredibly expensive, and it's not going to happen until we're in a crisis that will get away from the water we have rights to, because it's cost prohibitive in many cases unless we're encouraging it at a real level, saying something has to happen here. When someone's submitting, and I would think a developer would want to know if they can get water before they commit to all the other costs associated with even proposing their plan and going, meeting with their engineers and architects and so on. So I guess I'd like to see us do something. Maybe it's the medium ground, but it's stronger and it directs us towards updating our code.
And this is kind of what we talked about with Prosper. Mm-hmm. We had a big discussion about the water with Prosper, and we kept getting told, oh, you can't do that, you can't say that, and by the attorney at the time. He was telling us, no, don't go there. And I think from those of us who have spoken so far, we're saying, no, we want to go there, and we want to make sure that what happened there doesn't happen again. Because that's how some of us feel.
If I might respond to Commissioner Latz's comment, I can think of 2, 3, maybe 4 places that the comprehensive plan calls for looking at codes, building code, landscaping code, anything dealing with irrigation or landscaping, to evaluate the code and see what we can do to encourage water conservation.
Right. This is such a big level of water conservation and use versus, drought tolerant plants. I think we can't try to enforce it in one area and not take a broader view, because this document's going to live on potentially for another 10 years. And, I know developers large and small are going to look at this and say, well, what are the guiding principles if I come into the county and want to do something? And, I think in a similar fashion, we're talking about the utilities. It's very case by case, which leaves it open to exploitation. And I would like to see a little stronger guidance there on both of those things that are critical to whether or not you can live in an area.
I got a comment.
Mr. Rader.
I like to comment. Going back to Prosper. Prosper's water plan that we approved states that they will provide renewable source of water from East Cherry Creek Valley Water District to their project at a certain time. So we could require that they, in cases of emergency, they use the groundwater, but that they should use the renewable water source. But what do you do when a developer claims they don't, in their water plan, they're not going to do that? They're not going to use renewable water, or maybe they can't, or how big do they have to be to use renewable water versus a small little developer could not afford to do that unless they just purchase it from sources available today. East Cherry Creek Water, Pure Cycle, they'll pipe it right to where you're going. So it's available. So that it's kind of a quandary. Go ahead.
Mr. Rosenberg.
And as Julio and I know, this has been a big issue at the American Planning Association of Colorado for the last few years. They've carried legislation to try to get the state water plan enforced and make water conservation a more important issue. And this seems like it's our time to do that.
But we either do it or we just pass it on
Right.
down the road to the next person.
Right.
And it's on your conscience whether you want to do that or not.
And not everybody's spoken, but a lot of people have spoken here tonight as to being concerned about that. And I'm sorry I interrupted you, but that seemed like a major point right there to go, hey, we're going shall instead of will, when we believe will is more important these days. I mean, we're in a drought now.
Well, I think Alan said it. The county really doesn't have anything to do with water. And yet we feel like we need to put our nose into somebody else's business. And we seem to like to do that on everything.
Mark, I don't think that's true at all.
No, I mean, the county has a requirement to say there needs to be adequate water. But how they get that and where they get that from, it's not our jurisdiction.
So you're happy with taking out will and leave it we should?
Yeah, I mean, we want to, I mean, all that, it's like arguing against motherhood. All this stuff is good. Does the county have the right to tell us we have to do that? I don't think so.
Mr. Saul, do you have a comment?
I guess it's kind of in line that he was thinking. There's probably not much we could do.
You're happy with the way the staff recommended the changes?
Yeah.
I mean, it says in the plan, the state engineer controls groundwater. That's it. Every time we get into this argument, every one of these cases, the state engineer controls the groundwater. And we may not like that. We may not trust the state engineer, but that's the way it works.
Well, what about this, Mark, I guess I'm not following you. What about this asking developers requiring a water supply plan
I don't have a problem with that.
at the time of zoning?
That's right. I don't have a problem with that. They need to be able to provide water for the houses they're going to build. That's the county's, that's our job. Where they get the water from, and whether it's renewable, or whether it's groundwater, or whether it's East Cherry Creek Valley, or they're piping it out of the soft plat down to Timbuktu, that's their decision. They need to have adequate water to support the housing. I mean, that's what the subdivision business is. You have to have adequate water, adequate utilities to support the housing you want.
Okay.
Okay, well then let me ask about this. Let's go can I go particularly to the county attorney comments on page 10? If this change is implemented, the county should require a report documenting progress made in implementing the water supply plan, or will the county require a report documenting progress made in implementing the water supply plan? This is right up there with the requiring the water supply plan in the zoning stage. So will the county require this, or should they require it?
I'm not sure that this will.
Sorry.
On page 10. This is the should on the water supply plan of the zoning.
Right. I mean, in the case of Prosper, they provided a water supply plan. We didn't like it. So we argued about it. But the fact is they had water engineers and water people standing there saying, we can meet the water supply needs of this development.
How?
It doesn't matter.
It did to me.
I know it did to you. But the fact is they're going to use some groundwater, they're going to use some renewable water.
Right.
They provided us with a water supply plan that said they could do it. And the various parties involved, the state engineer, et cetera, said, I mean, they had engineers that study it. How would I know that they couldn't do that? I have no experience there.
And we approved it. I did.
Well, actually, we all voted it down, the county commissioners.
We did not approve.
Oh, that's right.
So, I'm just saying that the county's job is to make sure there's adequate water there, not where the water comes from.
Right, I don't care where the water comes from.
That's what we're arguing about. It doesn't have to be renewable, or it doesn't have to be groundwater.
Well, no, that's not what I was saying.
You were saying should versus will.
I'm saying at what point do you require a water plan?
Well, I think we do that. We require that they give us a plan so that they ensure that I mean, most of them come in like East Cherry Creek Water Valley, and they say, we will serve this area and we have enough water to provide water for the needs of the subdivision.
But here it says that we will not accept a will serve letter.
Absolutely.
And that,
Right. It's
that
whether
is
it's fiction or not.
Yeah.
So we just won't accept that.
Which to me covers quite a bit of it. It would have helped with Prosper. We will.
Didn't we have our own water engineer? Now we have to give up from 54. Didn't he agree that they had the groundwater, enough groundwater?
Yeah.
Isn't that true? Didn't he say to us?
We had an independent guy come in and he
for us.
said, yeah, it looks like their plan's reasonable.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I think we need to probably
No, I understand.
move on and come back to this. Are there any other
Can I just circle back around for just a second on some of this will versus should versus encourage? You might remember that we had a study session and talked about this to some extent. Some of this came from legal review of the document. Some came from comments that we received elsewhere, concerned that too much of the county will was sometimes influencing things that were outside the purview or the ability of the Planning Commission to control. And this is a document that is approved by the Planning Commission. You're the final approvers on this. This does not go to the Board of County Commissioners for approval, even though they had an opportunity for some input. So some of that came out of the legal review. The Planning Commission as a whole had some concerns about watering this down too much. So to some extent, there's kind of a compromise struck in here between things that have some stronger language that do fall more within the purview of the Planning Commission and some areas that might not seem as strong because they may be in areas that you don't have direct control. There was also a statement, and we reviewed this at a study session that was put into an earlier part of the document that explains that even though we have places where it says we will or the county will require that sort of language, that this is not a regulatory document, that language is really intended to reflect intent and importance and how strongly you feel about a subject. And many of these things, regardless of how they're worded, would require some subsequent action through the Land Development Code, amending the Land Development Code. And you can't actually require that the Land Development Code be amended because the board is the one that makes the final decision on that as those amendments are brought forward. So there is sort of a mix here. It's not intended to be confusing or inconsistent. It's more a matter of where can we put some strength of intent and, as we move forward and implement the comprehensive plan, how critical is it for us to really work on this? Obviously, water is a big area that we may not be water providers, but we do have the responsibility under the direction of the state engineer's office. The Board of County Commissioners has the responsibility to make a finding of water sufficiency when approving land use cases. And part of this recommendation deals with at what point in the process do you make that finding of sufficiency, because the county attorney has explained to us that the county can only require that be made at one point in the process. So you can't, you can have reports that go back and say, this is how we're making progress on our water plan. But if you made that determination of sufficiency at some point, you can't just keep going back and yanking the rug out from under a developer, essentially. You get one shot at making a finding of water sufficiency. So I know that doesn't help a lot, but maybe it provides a little bit of clarity as to why our language is inconsistent.
Right now it's at the permitting stage?
I'm sorry?
Right now it's at the permitting stage?
I don't know that we've really, no, it's not at the permitting stage, but it's, permitting to me is more like when you're getting construction permits and you're already past the land review. Yeah.
Let's say typically, isn't it at the replat or, PDP or SDP stage that you have to bring that in?
That is what we're trying to do for the most part.
Okay.
So, Mr. Rosenberg?
Of course, if there are too many please, 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 and not enough do, the Planning Commission does have the right to vote this down. Just to bring it up is before we get to the end of this document. Because if there's a majority who feel that water is important and that issue were not addressed to the sufficiency of the Planning Commission, as you stated, this is the Planning Commission's document. If the Planning Commission doesn't feel comfortable with it, they won't vote for it.
What about a different word, maybe?
That's what I was going to
Try a different word.
Well, I guess from a legal perspective, can we recommend or incent people to do things? Because I noticed, I'm not sure which strategy it was, but you actually specify, I think it's under affordable housing, actually, as a matter of fact, how the county would actually, encourage affordable housing development through, incentives or something of that nature. And I guess that you're hearing a fairly resounding, hey, we'd like this to be stronger than a, hey guys, please, please, please find some good water, So I guess what can we do, and maybe Bob, that's the question for you, is can we require them to look at something or, show an attempt or provide an incentive or anything like that?
I think maybe a way to address it is use the with the caveat language to the extent
possible or allowed
authorized under the law of Colorado.
That's cool. And we can keep our word request.
Yeah. So then we can keep the will and the should.
Yeah, and require.
But ultimately, we call it.
I say you might not be allowed to do this, but
we're going to have to adopt the code to enforce that.
Right.
This would be a planning document. This is your suggesting to the Board of County Commissioners, hey, you guys should adopt this code.
Right.
Well,
This is our
The citizens' vision about water.
overhead view. This is important.
Yeah, we've discussed this before, and I don't think
We changed.
the consensus is that we are wanting to keep it the way we originally intended it.
Right.
Yeah, I like
With
Bob's
that
suggestion.
caveat.
So that
Big
would,
caveat, but
We should go
feels
to
better.
public
Yes.
hearing.
so I just got one more. So that would be, under the strategy 1.2B, require the supplies during drought. We leave the word require in there and put the caveat that he's saying.
Yeah.
And then it may apply to other
And
areas.
then,
By state
And then-
statute or whatever.
Okay, I think we,
well, I got one more. 300-year water supply. I think it should say consider adopting. I think the county should adopt, not consider.
There are other counties that have it.
Yeah.
right, well, we may have to come back to this,
That one?
but
Okay.
we do need to consider that there may be some public here. So,
That's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay, we'll come back to that, but I think we need to open the public hearing.
I still have some issues.
I know, we're gonna come back,
We'll come back.
but I would like to get the public,
And then we
who's
can all
coming.
talk about any of those issues.
Yes, and then we can come back and talk about everything that's written in red. We do have 2 people that have signed in. They don't need to speak. And we do have a recording on, so if you do want to make a comment, you need to come forward to the microphone. We have Diane DeLilio. Do you wish to speak? Okay.
You should point out she's in favor.
And it does note that you are in favor of the new revised comp plan. Okay. We also have Doc Nario on South Quebec. Do you wish to come forward?
No.
Okay, and you also are in favor?
Yes.
And you choose not to speak? All right. Is there anyone else here from the public that would like to make a comment or ask a question? All right. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the Planning Commission. Thank you. Okay. There are several, I don't know how you want to go about doing this. Do we feel like the people that wanted the will and should, are we satisfied with the water, or do you want to go through other parts that were addressed in red that were the major changes? How do you want to do it, or is the rest of it okay if the water has been modified? Mrs. Lattis, what are you thinking?
I like I'll call it the compromise, where we may not have a lot of jurisdiction over it, but we're saying to the extent that we do, this is what we want. So I'm personally happy with that.
Okay, so you're happy with the staff suggestions on other components besides water, or do you want to discuss?
I do have one other I'd like to bring up, and that is the modification it's modified policy T1 and 2 GM 1.3. It's on page 7 at the top. To discourage the location of regional utility facilities in tiers 1 and 2. And I guess I'm responding to the comment at the bottom saying this policy implies that regional utility facilities should be located in tier 3. Is that where they should be located? And so my comment here is I think that we need a little stronger guidance here, because likely if all your development is happening in the urban areas and potentially tier 1, 2, all of that likely before tier 3, you're not going to be able to put all of your regional stuff out there. And if we don't have something a little more definitive about how we would like to see, these regional facilities rolled out, then it's going to be haphazard. I think, we're doing a case-by-case basis, and there's not going to be really any guidance to anyone as to how that should occur.
So you're suggesting that it should be considered case by case and not just
I guess
in tier 3?
And, well, I guess I would like to back up. Alan, are the comments in red on this particular one, is that from planning staff, or I wasn't entirely sure?
I think I got carried away on
What was red was?
What should be in red is just the modified policy discourage the location of regional utility facilities in tiers 1 and 2. The next sentence is actually appears in the plan currently.
What page?
It's on page 117.
So you're saying, Catherine, that this is too specific and you want to keep it broader so
No,
it
I
can
think
be
it's
case
too-
by case?
No, I think that it's too vague. And, if I know from some of the hearings we've sat through where, Xcel Energy's come in with location extent, those things are a big deal to those communities where those occur. And I think case by case, we're not providing any guidance, any vision as to how we think these things should be handled as we create density. And this comment struck me here as far as saying, well, this implies it's going to be all out in tier 3. We know that's not true. So I guess I'm just saying this feels incomplete to me and that there needs to be a little more guidance to the utilities.
Mr. Rosenberg?
So are you saying take out, however, some of these, that bold sentence there about on a case-by-case basis?
No, and I apologize if I'm not being clear, because it
That's
seems
fine.
to me that this actually needs to be fleshed out a little bit. There needs to be more detail, because the way it's written now, if we just say it's not compatible with tiers 1 and 2, is it compatible with tier 3? Where are we saying this should be located? And,
Oh, you mean where it
See what I'm
says
saying?
this implies it should be in 3?
Yeah.
Maybe it needs to say it should be in 3.
Well, or if that's not really how that development would occur, how should a utility come in and present a location extent? I'm saying this is too vague. We put a lot of time and energy into water and to regional disposal facilities. And these big utilities, if someone's going to go put up, a cell tower or, a power grid, line, a transmission line or something like that, I think this is it doesn't provide much guidance. And I guess from a vision perspective, I would think we'd want to be a little more like, can't be in a riparian area, it's got to be like this, it's got to be like that, we want that sort of thing. More guidelines. So.
At the risk of not having the right version in front of me, on page 63 in the countywide goals and policies, there's a strategy to develop standards for regional utility facilities. And it says that the county will develop one of those on your to-do list now. Develop standards that address the location of regional facilities. Standards to consider include visibility, noise, glare, can the road system handle it, fire and EMS providers get to it, they need to avoid sensitive development areas, riparian areas, habitats, visual significance.
Then how does this statement, because it seems to contradict that then? Maybe it just...
Well, if you have the standards, then you apply them on a case-by-case basis in Tier 1 and Tier 2. And there's not a complete ban on them, and they're all sent to Tier 3. But based on what they are and their impacts, we'll consider them in Tiers 1 and 2.
That's why the word discourage.
Mr. Rosenberg.
But of course, when it's an L&E coming in, the reality is whatever we say doesn't make a difference. If we vote no, they're going to do what they want. They have the right to do that. So if it's not done in the requirements, it doesn't have any meat.
And I guess, the only way to fix that is to repeal the state statute.
Okay. That's your next job.
Well, just in fairness, we do have some authority under 1041 regulations.
Okay, that's true. But not under the L&E.
Yeah, the LMEs.
It's kind of like, what are we wasting our time for?
I really struggle with where is the right place to put this stuff.
Yeah.
There's some redundancy as you read through this document. And we could put that same strategy under that section of the plan. It's a repeat, but
Maybe that's a good
it's right there.
idea.
I have a suggestion. Just looking at it, and as I understand this, listening to the conversation, I mean, certain regional utility installations may be compatible with Tier 1 or 2.
Right.
Certain other ones may not. Like a 5,000 acre solar farm or wind farm may not be compatible.
Right.
So maybe some language in there that, depending on, and this goes to the case by case, but, depending on what the facility is and what its needs are, what its impacts, and size scope would be, then we're going to discuss it.
I think that was a clearer.
I guess we're
Thought
asking if
process.
that can be rewritten a little bit. Would that help?
Yeah, because I guess the way it's written to me now, it's like it somewhat conflicts with, hey, we're going to put standards together.
But
Yeah.
We're not saying we want it all in Tier 3, and we're not saying it all should be in 1 and 2.
Well, and until we have standards, it's case by case by default. So
Right.
So,
I almost think we don't need it.
are you speaking to discourage the location of regional utility facilities in tiers 1 and 2? That's what you're talking to?
Yeah.
And then back over here, it says, consider utility facilities on a case-by-case basis. Maybe we could put that caveat at the bottom of this one, which would allow us to pick and choose what utility we want in 1 and 2 and wouldn't want, like you said,
Yeah. I mean, I just,
solar farm.
I don't know that
Bob
what,
hit
you know.
on it pretty good.
Yeah.
You've done that twice now. Keep
Yeah.
going.
I guess I'm not sure what the answer is. I like the standards piece, and I guess I'd like to see, as kind of an ongoing, once this is adopted, that actually happens and gets developed. I think that, case by case can, it can be exploited. That's all I'm saying.
I guess I'm confused. The version I'm looking at, under that policy is the strategy to develop those standards.
Are you asking basically how to tie this
Yes.
to the other?
Yeah. I guess so.
So what's on page 117 is on page 7 of the attachment A on the staff report, talking about discouraging the location of regional utility facilities. How does that tie in with
Right.
policy 12.3A on page 63 of the document to develop standards?
Thank you, Jan.
It ties
How does
in.
it link them better?
It ties in with referring to that strategy of 12.38.
If you go to page 117, the reference back to the other standards policies on that page. It follows the policy that you've been discussing. So the link may be there, it's just not on the attachment.
So where's it at?
Page 117.
I got 117, but where does it tie?
That policy 212 GM 1.3,
Yeah.
followed by strategy PFS 1.1 that references the standards policy.
Oh, okay, that puts us back.
Yeah, it's
There
not
then.
obvious from this attachment in the staff report, but if you go to page 117 in the draft document, it actually does refer you back to develop standards for regional utilities.
Okay, that works.
Alexis, do you see that? Does that help?
Yep, that helps. Actually, Jan's explanation helped me the best, so.
Okay. I guess
So that's it for me.
all right. Is there anything else that's on your mind? We're going to go down the table. Because if we don't bring it up now, then we're going to have to decide what we're doing with the document. Okay. You already said your piece?
Tried.
Okay. Well, we have a compromise. Okay. Mr. Rosenberg, any other thoughts?
No, water was my big concern.
Okay, we're going to go to the end of the table. Do you have some more comments? Mr. Brummel?
I'm not gonna be last.
No. You're not going to be last.
That's going this way.
I had an outdated version of Richards. Page 95, we have a purple strategy NCR 31.d. Deadlines to use of harmful chemicals and right-of-way and road maintenance permits. Where did this
come? It was policy or strategy. I may have seen another plan.
Yeah, this is, we need to get rid of it altogether.
Which one is it?
Whoever did this doesn't understand that chemicals are a tool just like a road grader.
Is it this one?
Out in our area, the county sprays the roads at least once or twice a year for noxious weeds. It's a very useful tool. There's no issue with harmful runoff, any of this stuff. Whoever put this in here doesn't understand chemical usage.
So it states county should minimize the use.
You're asking that it be deleted?
Yeah, I mean,
He's saying if there's no need for it.
chemicals are controlled by the EPA, Colorado Department of Agriculture, everybody. They're hot items, and if you use them correctly and according to label, there is no danger to anything. And I don't want the county to use this for an excuse to stop spraying noxious weeds in the roadways.
Mr. Brummel has proposed deleting strategy on page 95 related to chemicals in the right-of-way. Does anybody have a concern with that, or are we going to agree with that?
I agree with him.
Any opposition?
I disagree.
You disagree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I agree. Mrs. Lassett, do you agree or disagree?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Mrs.
I have
Chappell?
another issue.
I'll just get one more vote here. Diane?
Thank you.
Okay. We can come back to that.
She does.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Brummel.
The business is at the minimum size, lot size of 70 acres for 35 acres. Adams County's tried that. Elbert County tried it. They were both unsuccessful. My concern with that is right where I live, within a quarter mile of my place, there's two sections that have just gone to 35 acres. I think the strategy is, well, if we make it 70 acres, maybe we'll slow it down. And from what I've seen, making it 70 acres just consumes farmland at twice the rate as 35 acres. It doesn't slow anything down. It doubles the consumption of farmland into non-productive use. So I would like to see us remove any consideration of doing that.
Any reference to lot size is what you're saying?
Yeah,
Acres,
several,
right?
3 or 4 places where I don't know why it got in here. We suggested, well, we need to look at a 70-acre minimum lot size as opposed to a 35-acre lot size. And I'd say in the last 2 years, we've lost, at least out in the Stratford Byers area, we've lost 5 or 6 sections of farm ground to 35-acre lots. If we make it a 70-acre lot size, we're going to lose twice that much, twice as fast.
So is that in the revised draft?
Mr. Rosenberg has a comment. Just a moment.
I'd actually like to ask the retired Julio, who has worked with this as the long-range planner for many, many years, what his thoughts on that are, because I wonder if you might have some thoughts on that.
We're calling on Mr. Citizen.
Yes.
Julio Terraria for the record. The one problem that's continuing to see in the county is exactly what Mr. Brummel alluded to, is the fact that through the 35 acres, we're losing a lot of land, and we're having a lot of folks coming out thinking that they're going to get away from it all, etc. And the question that I've been wrestling with is to try trying to understand how to slow that down because, as we've been saying and as Alan has said throughout this entire process, we're trying to conserve ag land. We're not trying to conserve 35 acres. And so that's a real difficult situation. And I think Mr. Brummel is correct. We're losing a lot of ground to 35 acres because the state statutes allow for 35 acres to go basically untethered by the counties. And as a result of that, it creates a real issue. I don't disagree with what you're saying about the 70s, but I think it's an issue that needs a lot of thought. It's been going around for the last 30 years that I know of. So the question becomes, that was the intent of looking at your AE and A1 and recognizing that even on the drawings that approximately 50% of the eastern part of the county allows for 35 and less, and then the eastern part of that is for AE allows for 35s. And unfortunately, maybe the way to address it is that we're very concerned how the county is being literally encroached by 35-acre parcels and without any type of restrictions or jurisdictional value. We're just kind of sitting here taking it. And then the problem is if you're on the receiving end of this, you get folks complaining that their road is dirty, dusty, we broke a windshield on our nice Mercedes or whatever. And the point being is, or the schools are saying we have to go out farther now than we did before, et cetera, and they're hitting upon the county to get roads better. And again, that's a whole, it's a continual, it really turns things around. I don't have a simple answer for you. We threw the 70 acres as a way of looking at it and say, look, we got to put some attention to it. Maybe the better way to do it based upon this discussion is to have a paragraph on that. Say one of the things this comprehensive plan doesn't really have an answer for is the encroachment of 35s.
Well, one of the things in the plan that I did like was there's stuff in here about you're going to live out there. You're not going to get the county services you get here.
Well,
now, people should be aware of that. I understand that as soon as they move out there, they want that road paved in front of their house.
Oh, yeah.
And they want, big supers to be no more than 3 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some documentation here that says you can want that, but don't expect it.
Well, I guess one of the things and you're bringing up another thought that just came into my mind. For years, I think I have it even somewhere in my wallet, something called the Code of the West. And that's something that we have not implored into this particular comp plan. Might be something that we should, to use that as the example and start to put it out there, because this is a guide not only for developers and future property owners, but from all different walks of life. And just that reality that you're not going to get the same type of efficiencies that you get from working or living in a city or in an urban community type of thing. I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer, but I have to honestly think it's a real difficult, for all my experiences, it just keeps coming back. I agree. I wish we could do something with the 35s. I think it was done in 1972 when prices for land were very expensive. Now you can get 35 acres for not a lot of money in comparison to those dates. We haven't kept track of the inflation, if you will, with those 35s, and so now we're getting into the issue where literally our ground is our ag land is being eaten up. And this is only just one example where that's occurring.
If I can add to what Julio just said, recognizing that 70 acres may not be the answer, nor 80 acres is proposed in the 2001 plan. On staff comments AA and FF, I propose to modify that language to look at the issue and come up with some alternatives, and it's not necessarily 70 acres. So we're looking at that particular performance standard, minimum lot size, to see if there is something we can do to address the issue of.
But as Mark said,
using
other counties have tried to deal with the same issue and not successfully been able to resolve it.
How would you, off the top of your head, like to see this addressed? Or not?
It's to you.
Yeah.
And we know that you don't like it, but how would you fix it?
Well, I think Larimer County puts out a guide that says if you're going to move out into the rural part of the county, here's the things you need to expect. There's going to be tractors going down the road at 20 miles an hour. If you're in a hurry to get to work, too bad they go 20 miles an hour. You need to expect things like that to happen out here. If it snows, it may be a few days before the snowplow gets there. You better not worry about it. Don't call the county. They're doing what they can. And people just are, they buy 35 acres and they are completely unaware of what they're getting into. We talked about this before. If you're going to buy 35 acres, you need to have a plan for what you're going to do with that 35 acres. You need to control noxious weeds on it. You need to control soil erosion on it. Most of the people that I know that buy 35 acres buy it as a buffer zone so nobody can build around it. They don't even see their property or drive to the corners of their property. It's just nobody can build close to it.
So would you prefer no acreage mentioned? Or bigger?
I don't think making it going from 35 to 70 is going to do anything.
It's not going to solve the problem.
It's all kind of dependent on the economy. Right now, housing prices are through the roof. You could sell anything for $500,000. People can come out and buy 35 acres. It's a cheap lot. They can pay 3 times what a farmer can pay to build a house on it. And build a house and make money on it. Now, in 2008, that was reversed. Things were good in the farm economy. Nobody wanted to build a house. So it kind of ebbs and flows. There were 48, 35 acre lots out there for sale for 12 or 15 years. And then boom, they went away. I had a friend of mine just south of Strasburg on 157 put 12 35 acre lots on the market and sold them all in a month.
So how do we preserve the agriculture?
Well, I don't know that there's anything we can do about that.
Mr. Rosenberg?
I'm going to defer to Mark, and I think he understands what's going on out there. And if we don't, it sounds like we really don't have an answer right now, and why try to create an answer?
That's why staff comments AA and FF say, look at this issue and evaluate some alternatives. Right. Also, we've added the strategy of let's go to the state and get the definition of subdivision changed.
Which really goes to the Board of County Commissioners and lobbyists they employ and what they want to direct them to focus on.
Because, the real key is that there's no review of those.
Right.
So you don't know if they're adequate roads, drainage, schools, anything.
A lot of them, a good majority of them are private roads.
Mr. Rader has a comment.
A big problem.
I think what you described as information of what people can accept and what cannot be provided by the county, however you put it, should be in here. That's a notification to them. Here's what you're going to get.
There's text in here about doing that.
Is there enough? If it's not enough, maybe you can modify it. Seriously.
You should draft that.
Yeah, draft it. Let's get it in.
I think you borrow it from Larimer County.
Yeah, can we do that?
Well,
And
I
maybe
don't know.
they've got a
We should look at
brochure
Elmer
they're
County.
requiring
Elmer County's a
realtors
big
to
county,
pass out.
and they have no money. They have no resources. I mean, nothing compared to Arapahoe County. So you move into Elmer County, you're on your own.
Okay, Mrs. Lampton.
Elmy, this question for you. Do we measure at all, whether it's countywide or statewide, how much agricultural acreage is being taken offline? I mean, is that any kind of metric that the state's monitoring?
I don't know about the state. I don't know if the county is even doing it. Part of the problem is, since there's no review process, it's way after the fact that we find out about 40-acre and 30-acre subdivisions. You'll might remember, I didn't bring it tonight, but remember a map that I had put together about all those 35 and 40 acres that have been created in that part of the county, and we know about it after deeds get recorded.
The inventory places, I guess there's a couple of sources. One is the assessors. If you believe the land they classify as agriculture is really agriculture, there's a table that they put out that the state compiles for the whole state that says here's how much land is assessed as agricultural land. And then every 5 years, the Department of Agriculture does a census of agriculture where the farmers actually report. They're doing that right now on how much land they have and what kind of uses they're putting it to, which probably is a little more accurate than the assessor's file. So we have that data in the years that end in 2 and 7.
So not very often.
Well, the Department of Agriculture puts out a report based on that information, but it's nationwide. You know, they'll say we lost 2 million acres of farm ground in the last 5 years.
So we do get the census for the county. So the 2012 data is summarized on the demographic page on the website. So you can see what it was 6 years ago and compares it with the 5 years before that. I don't remember what the loss in farms was. I know that we've been adding a lot of small farms that probably are not economically viable.
But we have no control over this, so.
Mr. Rummel, you're the one who's in charge of whatever
You're gonna
is included
fix the
or not.
problem. Yeah.
We defer, all of us.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm okay with striking that language. On the
Would you like to have all that language struck?
No, I'm striking
The hazardous chemicals.
the hazardous chemical.
Okay. We'll have another vote on the hazardous chemicals.
Well, I had to think about it.
No, I think that has been struck successfully.
Only on Tuesday.
I think there were 2 that didn't want it taken out, right?
I'm one.
So you wanted to keep the chemicals?
No, I didn't strike.
Okay, well, I think that's a definite consensus.
I was thinking right.
That was.
Okay. Mr. Saul, do you have any
He just struck
specific
it.
considerations?
No, not that.
See how easy that is?
Mr. Brummel, do you have any other considerations? You can speak up later if you wish. Okay. Mr. Rosenberg, you said no?
No.
Any more comments on any of the proposed red areas? Because those were the areas that we were supposed to pay the most attention to. Does Strasburg need a new updated Strasburg sub-area plan? You're the man on that. You don't know? Okay.
Haven't heard anything really going on.
The Strasburg sub-area plan is developed by this developer in Strasburg. It's to do what he wanted to do. And he seems to be curtailing his activities, so I don't know what that means.
So it might be readdressed at a future date?
Yeah.
Okay. On the bottom of page 14, I think the suggested language is fine relating to the multi-hazard mitigation plan. That was on 14.
Yeah, you were on 14.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's fixed.
And the new, on the bottom of page 16, under economic health, a statement about allowing new employment and commercial development in the rural area only if it is agricultural related. Is that okay, Mr. Brummel? You don't have a strong opinion on that? Okay.
I got a question.
Okay.
How would you describe what is and what's not agricultural related when it would come before us?
Well, it has to be related to agriculture, I guess. Well,
how would you do that? Just case by case?
All of this, I think, is case by case.
Okay.
Mr. Rosenberg.
I'm a little confused by that too. Does this mean if Walmart wanted to build or Amazon wanted to build a 500,000 square foot or 1 million square foot distribution center out in Strasbourg, which would provide a huge amount of jobs out there, they couldn't do it?
So it's encouraged in the rural town centers, but if it was between Byers and Deer Trail, we might go, that's probably not a really good area. There's no water, there's no access, there's no...
But if it were near Strasbourg or Byers, in that area, out to Byers maybe,
But what about
that would be okay.
huge farm supply?
A lot of those places don't use much water.
Cow feed.
If Amazon built a distribution center, they don't need much water.
No.
They flush the toilet.
That's right. But
I mean,
that would be agricultural related.
Well, they're going to want the pavement too, in a parking lot.
Yeah, but no, the robots don't use the toilet.
But that's a case by case basis.
Right.
Yeah, but they're still jobs.
Yeah, I was really talking more about, do you want to focus non-agricultural, business development more in the town centers like Byers, sub-area or the Strasbourg sub-area, or would you want to stick it just out in the middle of,
nowhere.
open
What about Manila Road?
Mm-hmm.
That could be an area that could end up with a Walmart and other stores in the future. They might not want to go in Strasbourg. Manila Road's a pretty big intersection there, and there's going to be a lot of housing around that area, and it's in Tier 1.
And we have to realize that these things change over time. If Aurora goes through with the city's current annexation proposals,
We're gone.
A lot of that'll be
a
Aurora.
lot of things may change.
Yeah, if they annex 50 square miles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've addressed nearly all of the highlighted areas. So I guess this is our last chance to make it. Any comments on the suggested changes or not? And sometimes there are no change. Is no change. Ricky, did you get the suggested modification to the water supply issue that this suggested referring back to state statute or state law?
Yes, what I wrote down is that it would say will to the extent, and I'll just change this language, to the extent that can be facilitated under state law.
Okay, and the word.
I think what I just want to make sure I understand your intent. Your intent is to give more heat to water sufficiency and water quality.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Were there any other wills or shoulds that we wanted left in?
No.
Okay. I think water was the big one. Okay. Are you all done with discussing, or is there something else that we want to do? Otherwise, we're going to have to take a break if we want to sit here for another half hour. So what's your pleasure? You want to carry on, or are you comfortable with what we've done?
I'm comfortable.
Yeah. Mr. Rosenberg, are you comfortable? Mr. Rader, are you okay?
I got a question. What happened with the water? Page 48. We had require up there at the emergency. Are we changing that to some other word?
That's what we just talked about. She's discussing it with the county attorney, and we're putting back in will require.
Well, it says require the use of groundwater.
Yeah, and we're gonna
Are
add
we
that
leaving-
to the extent possible.
Yeah, but I mean, that's okay.
To the,
And then,
to the extent allowable under state.
that's good. And I'm a little slow.
No, you're fine.
300-year water supply, we're going to require it
To the extent that the state said.
that same way?
Yeah.
That's caveat?
That's right. Everything
Okay,
underwater.
I'm good.
Right, that we have limitations, as Mr. Brummel said.
Okay.
Okay.
Because we need to quantify the changes that we made so we can make a motion, is that right?
Are you wanting a motion tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
So what would help is,
Could you go over the changes that you think we said? I didn't write anything down.
What would be in the motion?
I was saying, we got 2 waters, we've got to strike the hazardous chemicals.
We know the chemicals are gone.
And the language as amended, I think, regarding the 70-acre parcels was good.
And there was one other thing, the utility thing was going to be.
so on
Yeah,
the 70-acre parcels, you want to strike that?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Well, I think
Yes.
We did a break, we did 5-minute break.
Yes. I think we're going to take a 5-minute break. And
Okay.
when we come back, can you give us the summary?
Yes.
And then the caveat for the water, because we're going to have to make
Yeah.
a motion.
I think, so I thought in the attachment, you'd already stricken the 70 acres.
Yeah,
it was
So, so we want to go with the amended version, where it takes that out, we're studying it. Yeah. So I think we're okay on that.
So we'll just take a little break. Just as a reminder, the recording, the YouTube is still running. We can't actually turn it off for breaks.
Right.
So,
You know, you do have to rewrite this because it has Paul Rosenberg, the Planning Commission chair.
Yeah, that's good. I think what we'll do is pass the motion and come back with a corrected resolution, which chair will then present to the chair.
Okay, or can we pass it and ask to see next week the amendments and approve them? And that way, people can see them drafted. I don't care about seeing them drafted, but we could do that.
How do we need to do this? So like under further changes, do we just know, like, pull an item number from here and say, line number blah blah is changed to reflect the allowable language.
I would think that between Jan and
I don't know, we got
Kind of muscle that one.
yeah, muscle it through, kind of get it in the motion, and
Okay.
changes as discussed.
Okay, perfect.
Diane suggested.
Read it. Okay. Yeah, I read that. That was really interesting. Like New Orleans has exactly the opposite problem with the Denver metro area. They have too much water.
Exactly. there's nothing better than going
Try to harvest and shoot on.
to Cafe Des Moines and then walking up the hill and sitting there on the bench and watching the sunrise on the Mississippi, having your chicory coffee and day. It's wonderful.
You know, the planes that are raised out
I want to know if they're in business. For like a quick stop, it's just such a different, unique
absolutely.
place.
Absolutely.
It's like they say,
Yeah.
where, you know,
Oh, yeah.
you always end up driving by the cemetery where everything's above ground.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
You think about that.
Yeah.
120 acres and that stuff.
Yeah, you don't want to state it. You don't want to have someone come up to you and say, I bet you $5 I can tell you where you got those shoes. I got those shoes. And you know, because there's street hustlers everywhere. And you say, what? And they say, I bet I can tell you. I bet you $5 I can tell you where you got them shoes. And so you fall for it. And they go, you got them shoes on Bourbon Street. Because you're standing right there on Bourbon Street. And so you have to turn over your $5 to the guy that.
Okay, we will call the meeting back to order. And I think Mrs. Yuckies is going to give us a summary of what we think we agreed to.
So Alan's going to make sure I do this right. Or you all can make sure I do this right. So basically, I think what you would be doing is making a motion, if this is what you choose to do, making a motion to approve the proposed comp plan with the changes that have been identified in the staff report, with the attachments to the staff report, with several exceptions. And the things I have noted are that on page 48, I can double check these pages, but I think it was on page 48, with respect to requiring water plans and transitioning from groundwater to renewable water, that sort of thing, that would be changed to say that it would be required to the extent allowed under Colorado law, and we'll work with Bob Hill, County Attorney's Office, to make sure we get that worded correctly. But the intent is to put some teeth back into that, do more than just encourage, and but to do so in a way that we're not violating what we can do under law. Okay. I have in there that you would like to make the change to the 300-year water supply, and that you'd like it to say that the county should adopt that as a standard as opposed to encouraging.
Why do we have they should adopt? Why can't we say adopt?
Well, it can be part of the comp plan, but we can't amend the land development code through
We don't have that.
Oh, I understand that.
Through the comp plan. Right. So we can have that as a comprehensive plan standard, but we can't put it in the sense that you could require it in the land development code without going through some process. The question about the utilities, I believe, was determined to have been resolved, that the way it is written on page 117 addressed the concern, so there was not an additional change needed there. That on page 95 for the NCR 3.1D, which talks about minimizing use of harmful chemicals in right-of-way and road maintenance, that would be deleted, because it conflicts with the careful and wise use of agricultural chemicals and noxious weed control chemicals and that sort of thing that are important in agricultural areas. We determined that the issue of changing lot sizes to 70 acres rather than 35 acres in the AE areas, there are already changes proposed to that language that address that, so that was not needed as an additional change. And the other specific thing I wrote down was that Commissioner Rick is okay with the changes that have been proposed on page 14 with respect to the hazard mitigation plan, that you're okay with that language. It does not need further change. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
So I think if you wanted to, rather than repeating all that, you could just make a motion to approve it with the changes identified by staff with the additional changes or exceptions read into the record.
Mr. Rosenberg.
I move that.
Awesome.
Make this simple.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Lapsus, you second.
Okay, we have a
Good
motion
job, Jan.
that's been seconded by Mrs. Lapsus. I guess we can just take a voice vote. Okay.
Would you like me to call the roll, or you would just want to
Follow.
Let's call the roll.
It's a big deal.
Okay. Commissioner Lapsus.
Yes.
Commissioner Chapman.
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenberg. Commissioner Rader. Commissioner Saul.
Yes.
Commissioner Brummel. And Commissioner Rick.
Yes.
Okay, 7-0 to vote for approving the comprehensive plan with the changes identified. Thank you all so very much for not only tonight, but I don't know, what have you been doing? Like 3 years worth of study sessions. So
I have a comment, Mrs. Chapman.
I would just like to say thank you to the planning. I know this is a great night. You can all go have a big, really strong drink. You have done a wonderful job, so thank you so much for doing it.
Well, thank you very much. And Mr. Mugler asked me to clarify that is also with the effective date of February 12th.
Yes.
Yes.
So, which will give us time to incorporate these changes.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I don't have anything additional.
Feather in your cap.
Motion is, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Good job, Jane. Wonderful job.
Oh, thank you.
You guys.
Are invaluable.
Yeah, we're kind of honored that
I know we are.
Oh.